I'm Tara.
I'm Ryan.
We love Disney movies.
So we decided to watch them all, from Snow White
to Frozen 2 and beyond. Each episode will watch a different Walt Disney Animated Studios film and tell you all about it.
Did we like it? Does it hold up? Who's our favorite hero?
Or villain.
We'll give you history and fun facts about each movie.
And sometimes we'll invite our friends to watch along with us.
So put on your tiara
or your evil crown
and join us on our adventure.
This is Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries. I'm Ryan.
I'm Tara.
And we are here to talk today about 1938.
So, yeah, I thought it was 1937, but it was released February 4th, 1938.
1938, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yes.
This is our first kind of real episode, so bear with us as we kind of figure out what we're doing. We've written it down all on paper, so we're going to see how good it feels.
So, I guess we'll start with the IMDb. I always switch the letters. The synopsis of it, and I think it would be kind of fun to read the synopsis from one to the other. And I'm curious if this was what was on the back of the movie jacket. Yeah, I don't know. But it says, the grim fairy tale gets a Technicolor treatment in Disney's first animated feature. Jealous of Snow White's beauty, the wicked queen orders the murder of her innocent stepdaughter, but later discovers that Snow White is still alive and hiding in a cottage with 7 friendly little miners. Disguising herself as a hag, the queen brings a poisoned apple to Snow White, who falls into a death-like sleep that can be broken only by a kiss from the prince.
I feel like whoever wrote this was like, what's another word for witch? Like, why wouldn't you just say the witch instead of like, ooh, hag, that sounds good.
Well, because she was disguising herself.
So she's a witch all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's the wicked queen, I guess, all the time, not necessarily a witch.
I guess, fair.
Yeah.
My apology, that I didn't mean to be ageist.
I don't know, but I will say hag is an interesting description. But and apparently on Rotten Tomatoes, it's 98%. So.
That's crazy. So this movie, today while I was doing a little work, kind of had a making of in the background, which was voiced by Angela Lansbury. Which was very
fun.
Well, when we get a Facebook group up and going, I'll post that there. So this is Walt Disney's first movie, right? So before this, they were doing like Silly Symphonies, and they did Steamboat Willie and a couple million Mickey Mouse projects that were the stuff that used to go on before movies. When you'd go to the movies and there'd be like trailers and newsreel and a cartoon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Walt put all his money into this movie and almost destroyed the studio.
Oh, interesting.
It ended up costing $1.5 million. $1.5 million, yes, $1.5 million. Which was crazy. The idea of a movie being over $1 million, and there was a point in the documentary I was listening to where Walt had to go to the bank and go, yes, I know you gave me $1 million, the most money anyone had ever given anybody at that point.
But I need more.
I need another $500,000
to
get out there. And he'd like put all of his family money into it, and he'd done all this stuff. So if this movie hadn't done well, which it did, there would be no Disney, period. It would be over. It would be these weird cartoons we remember every once in a while.
And it's also based, as most of these fairy tales are, off of the Grimm story. So I just have a very brief synopsis of that as well. So Snow White is what it was titled, and it is a 19th century German fairy tale, which today is known widely across the Western world. Brothers Grimm published it in 1812, and the first edition, it was in the first edition of their collection, Grimm's Fairy Tales. So I just found that interesting. I'm always curious about the years of things. So the fact that the story itself originated in 1812 probably means people were telling the story probably verbally and not written down even before 1812. Hypothetically.
Walt Disney had seen it in a movie or something, decided that's what he wanted to do. He invited all the animators over, apparently, and acted out the entire movie, like, to all of them, and said, like, this is going to happen and this is going to be this. Walt Disney, I think we're going to have a very interesting relationship with him, because I have thoughts on Walt Disney that probably aren't, there's the Walt Disney, the character that the Disney Corporation puts forward, and there's Walt Disney, the Union Buster, potentially anti-Semite, though I don't know a whole much about that part of him. But
or how, yeah.
all geniuses have issues. So, and he was, without a doubt, a entertainment genius.
Yes, and so innovative in so many different ways, not only in the movies, but pretty much every aspect, I think, of the company.
Well,
what he was doing.
They talk about in the documentary about this movie being very different because they tried to draw people very real. You know, they look animated. The dwarfs are one thing, but Snow White, the Huntsman, the Prince.
And even the Wicked Queen when she's not the hag.
Yeah,
how I'm now going
hag.
to refer to her as instead of the witch.
So I've got some little fun facts I looked up that I want to throw at you.
Some little fun fairy tale facts?
Some fairy tale facts.
Yeah.
So one of the things when they were doing this for Snow White is to draw makeup on her. The group that did like the painting and stuff, they were just called, I think, the Ink and Paint. There's in Roger Rabbit, when they go to the club where Jessica Rabbit sings, it's called the Ink and Paint Club, which is a reference to this.
To these guys.
Well, these ladies.
Ooh.
Because these ladies, and they decided, okay, how are we going to do the makeup on Snow White? And they used real rouge and real makeup to put on her.
Oh, that's
Just
neat.
drew it onto the cell, and they showed it to Walt, and he goes, this looks great, but how are you going to know exactly where it should go and everything? And the woman went, what do you think we do every morning? They were very, like, fussy with him, like, we'll be fine, don't you worry. Yeah, now, what do you think about this movie? When's the last time you saw it, or have you seen it?
As a child.
Yeah.
I have not seen it as an adult. What I remember the most about Snow White is the ride, which I loved. The ride in Walt Disney World that terrified Ryan. I remember really enjoying it. You're on a minecart and you're going through like the spooky woods and the witch pops out a handful of times, not just once. Shout out to one of our favorite podcasts of all time, Podcast The Ride.
If you're enjoying this podcast, there's a good chance you're going to enjoy Podcast The Ride.
And probably more so than ours.
We'll edit that out. My goodness.
But it's really great, and they review and go very in-depth in different rides. Very Disney-focused, but also other theme parks as well. But they specifically have an episode on the minecart Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs ride. That scared me when I remember very vividly going on that ride. When I was a kid, my parents think this is funny, ugly women scared me. Like the witch, the hag isn't
it's not just
only,
ugly women.
She was like, her eyes bulged out of her head. Like, she is creepy. She's got like stringy hair. She's got a hunchback.
It's also, it was called Snow White's Scary Adventures, so
yes.
I wasn't being...
No, I'm not saying it's surprising you were terrified. I just remember really enjoying it.
I know you think that, but to all the people out there who are, making fun of me in their heads, their hearts, and to their vehicle dashboards, I'm a big brave boy who ain't afraid of nothing. I very vividly remember you go on the ride and it's the queen and she's looking in the mirror and she's like, mirror, mirror, and she turns around, and when she turns around, she turns into the hag.
Yes.
And the next thing I remember is staring at my feet and then finally I get the courage to look up, and it was like all scary trees, and like an alligator came out at me, and I went, nope. Yeah. And I went right back to my feet. And then they all lived happily ever after. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. This is Snow White, right?
So I remember the movie as a child. I don't remember details about the movie. I've not been back to Disney World since they've done the minecart.
That one looks cool.
It looks cool, yeah, but so I haven't been on that ride. So as far as remembering Snow White, I remember bits and pieces of it. I remember the dwarves. And like I said, the I'm wishing... Yes.
How's it go?
I'm wishing
right,
for the one I love.
I got her this episode,
she sings it much higher than that, I think. But like, I can vividly remember a close friend of mine, Jeremy, singing that out and us just being silly with it. But I don't... Other than that, like, I know the story, but I don't have a lot of, like, nostalgic memories. I would say the other thing is the dwarves became a big deal. Like, which dwarf do you identify with? Like, which dwarf do you like? And I was always Grumpy and Dopey. Were the two I really remembered liking.
Funny you mentioned the dwarfs, because they went through a very large list of names
I'm
to come up
seeing
with
this.
with the 7 that they went with. These aren't even all of them. There's ones that were very strange.
Oh my gosh.
So other names considered for the dwarfs included Busy, Crabby, Daffy, Dumpy, Flabby,
Yikes.
Helpful, Lazy, Scrappy, Sniffy, Snoopy, Stubby, Thrifty, and Wheezy.
I like Thrifty, personally.
I don't know how that would enter into like an interesting, like, how would you show that?
Thrifty would be like crafty. He would be, or she. Well, I guess they were all male dwarves.
Let's save that for a recap.
So,
We'll
yes.
make a female dwarf.
But he would be like, he'd be able to make something out of nothing. Because he's thrifty, so he would be able to like.
That's not thrifty. Crafty. I like this idea of this new dwarf you've come up with.
Maybe.
Crafty,
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
who's always building everything.
Yeah, but some of these Flabby's not great. Dumpy's definitely not great. I am curious though with Daffy and Snoopy, did those characters already exist? Like, did Daffy Duck exist at that time? Did Snoopy the dog exist at that time?
I don't think so.
I'm gonna do it quick.
Snoopy did not, because I read in there that Charles Schultz specifically said, "I'm glad they didn't use Snoopy because then I wouldn't have been able to."
Oh, okay. I'm gonna look up Daffy Duck and just.
So a couple other. I'll go ahead and I'll say my history of this. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Daffy first appeared in Porky's Duck Hunt, released in April 17th, 1937.
So they probably that might have been a contributing factor to why they didn't use Daffy. They may have
potentially, yeah. And
this was in development for years.
This was so they may have been in development before Daffy Duck came out publicly, but it was around the same time that his character was released.
Came out publicly. I just like the idea of this, like it's like Roger Rabbit, where the cartoon exists, but he hasn't had his big break. So this was the first animated feature to be selected for the National Film Registry. Is another wonderful fact I have. Another terrible fact I have is this was one of Adolf Hitler's favorite films, along with King Kong and Sun Valley Serenade.
Oh, that's a Glenn Miller. Glenn Miller's music is in Sun Valley Serenade. I don't actually know anything about the movie.
It's pretty well known that Adolf Hitler was a big film fan.
Oh, interesting.
Well, that's why there's so much propaganda. There's all this propaganda film, and there's a lot of film techniques that they study in Nazi propaganda. They're like, the subject of this is awful, but the thing they're using here, German film directors were very good around that time.
So what is your memories associated with Snow White? Or do you have
the scary ride, I think, is a big one. My grandmother recently, one of the things that kind of endeared this one to me recently is my grandmother, before she passed, was telling me, I was just decided to ask her, like, Grandma, what's your favorite movie? I assumed it was Wizard of Oz because she was a big Wizard of Oz fan, which she said was her other favorite movie, but she said this was.
Oh.
And she talked a lot about how amazing it was to watch in theaters, and I think that's when this movie came out. It was the I don't know if it was highest grossing or most seen or whatever. It was the big deal movie that was then short. Like all of the records it's made were then
based off of.
Well, no,
compared to Snow White.
No, I'm saying then Gone with the Wind came out and
oh, I see.
It didn't have a long reign.
Got it.
At the top before Gone with the Wind came out. Yeah, I just thought that was it was interesting to me. Like, I just don't think I would have ever said that my grandmother's favorite. She, in her later years, she watched a lot of Downton Abbey and stuff. She always was watching British things. I remember I told you that story where she said she was watching Mad Men, and she wanted to make sure that I understood that everyone wasn't obsessed with that much sex back then. And I was like, okay, Grandma, thanks.
Yes, she was a secretary at an engineering firm. So
yes.
Head secretary. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know that I have any family connection in the sense of like, oh, I remember that being like a family member's favorite movie or anything like that. But I would like to include that if we come across movies that we associate with family members as well. Before we start, who's your favorite dwarf? Oh, I think I mentioned earlier, I relate it to Dopey and Grumpy. You gotta pick one. I gotta pick one? I want to wait until I rewatch it, because I have a feeling I might want one that I've not just mentioned. Well, I relate to Dopey, and I'll explain this before we watch Your big ears. Excuse me? You don't have big ears. Excuse me? You don't have big ears. But I just thought it was a funny comment. Okay, continue.
So when I don't know what grade it was in. It was somewhere between
I'm so
first
sorry,
and fifth.
you really don't have big ears.
Yeah,
Listeners,
no, I'm gonna let
his
you-
ears
no,
are not
it's
that
okay.
big.
It's might have been fourth or fifth grade. There was a friend of mine, and we did a in the talent show. We sang "Someday My Prince Will Come," but we thought this was really funny, and then when we did it, I'm surprised we didn't get like. This was 1986, so he comes out and he's wearing the Snow White dress, and he sings "Someday My Prince Will Come."
Okay.
And then I walk out as Dopey with a sign on my shirt that said Prince, and like we sang the end of it, and I don't know, like, this is 1980 something in Texas at a fifth grade, fifth or fourth, I think it's fifth grade talent show. Tara,
Okay, it was not that. Do the math. You were not that old in 19.
No, you're right. So it must have been
Yeah, it was the
92.
90s.
Yes, it was early 90s.
It's not the 80s.
Either way, I wasn't 5. I was in 5th grade.
Yes.
So let's say it's 92. Tara, we killed. Like the video when we used to have, you couldn't hear us over everyone laughing, and it wasn't like, and then someone like beat me up later or like didn't like. We never got called anything or like bullied at all. We just did it, and we killed. It was and it's very strange for me to remember that. I will also remember that the year before, or maybe the year after, it was this friend of mine's mom was kind of a stage mom.
Okay.
So he did another one where he sang Me and My Shadow, and it was him as Peter Pan, and then our another friend, Colby, as the Shadow. Colby is black, and I hadn't really put that together until just now. Speaking of inappropriate things that don't hold up.
What was innocent? You guys were in what, like 5th grade, 6th grade?
Our parents knew what we were doing. In fact, I think they were like his mom was putting this stuff together. I just think she just picked a friend and went, go, and didn't think about it. But anyway, yeah, I think that's everything I got. Are you ready? Do you want to go watch?
Yeah, we'll go watch it, and then we'll come back and chat a little bit more.
Yeah, guys.
Oh, well, did you have a favorite dwarf? Or Dopey?
Dopey.
Because
that's what I was dressed up as. All right, so I think we're going to go watch Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and we'll see you guys at the end.
We'll see you on the other side. And we're back.
Hello. So,
we've just finished watching Snow White. And we have some thoughts, but what I will say is I loved it. Like, I don't remember genuinely enjoying it as a kid. Like, it was never one that stuck with me, and I laughed, and I mean, I have some thoughts, but at the same time, I did really enjoy it.
Okay. So, it's not my cup of tea.
Really?
When it comes to these. It was good. Like, there's no question that it is a animation, like... Triumph. It's crazy to think that was like attempt 1 by anybody on a feature film animated. That's crazy good.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, there's some things like I didn't like about it. There's parts I liked way more than I thought I would. Like I'll be honest, I went into this. Snow White has never been my favorite.
Agreed.
Or anywhere close. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we could start with
Agreed. And I actually came out of it really liking it a lot. I think what we'll do is we both took notes
we took
lots
of notes.
Yeah, we took notes while the movie was happening, and we talked a little bit, but we were trying to save a lot of it for the recording, which is, if anyone knows us, is tough. Usually we pause movies and chat about our opinions about characters, no matter what the movie is.
We're good in theaters, but if you come
we're
over to watch
theaters,
a movie with us, you have to let us know. Like, we'll take forever. Game of Thrones episode with us was
like 2
hours.
long,
Yeah, because you're like, pause. Okay, who's that guy?
Yeah. But the one thing that I loved.
Do we want to just like go through the plot, like what happens generally, like?
Oh yeah, if you want, yeah.
So it opens with a storybook, which is something I forgot a lot of Disney stuff.
That's where I was gonna start.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, the one thing I really liked that made me super nostalgic was the credits being at the beginning and the writing, the like handwritten animation of the title of the movie, which happens for a lot of movies, and you were saying is something that in general that's what movies did.
They
the
used to
credits
do
in
that
the
to where it
beginning.
was like maybe because I bet you're thinking of like what's White Christmas does that and stuff does that.
Well, no, I'm thinking specifically Disney movies, like 101 Dalmatians does it, and Sleeping Beauty does it, and I believe Lady and the Tramp does it. So it made me very nostalgic for those movies that we're going to watch later because I can vividly remember the opening credit sequence. So that got me excited, and I'm also curious to see the switch when like it switches and that no longer happens.
I think that's going to happen in like the 70s, but I can't quite remember.
Yeah, and then before the storybook opens, something that I didn't know or ever paid attention to was there is a quote from Walt Disney, and he writes, "My sincere appreciation to the members of my staff whose loyalty and creative endeavor made possible this production," which I thought was kind of sweet.
But my response was, especially the person who had to stay late on a Saturday to write this extra, to do this extra
Animation.
not animation, but whatever.
Yeah. But I did think that was sweet, especially after you were looking up, like, it was a huge undertaking and he took out all this money and, like, all these people worked so many hours on this project to see it to the end. So I thought that was sweet that happened.
It was also kind of cool because it was kind of, like, very fourth wall breaking and very, like, you know, like, this is a movie. Like, not only is this a movie, but it's a piece of... It was like reading a book. It was like, here's... My thanks. It's
yeah,
Walt
like it was
Disney
a forward
print
or
on it.
yeah, and I thought it was a nice way for him to thank everybody publicly to recognize that like there was a lot of hard work that went into it. But as Ryan mentioned, it opens with the storybook, and I believe several of the movies do that.
Yeah,
and
well,
I'll be curious to see where that stops, where they change that. But it opens with the storybook, and it reveals a short description. So essentially, it's telling you that, you know, there's a princess and she lives with her stepmother.
Do they say what happened to her father?
No, they don't. They don't mention her father, and it's just like a very brief description. I was going to write it down, and it was like 2 storybook pages long. But it basically gives you a brief description to kind of set you up for like where you're at, and then it opens with Snow White in her...
No.
Oh, no, it opens with the Queen, excuse me.
And the mirror.
Yes.
So let's take this opportunity to start talking about the villain.
Yes.
How did you like the
Queen has never been like one of my like top villains, and I will say, listeners, here's a recommendation. If you like board games, the board game Villainous is amazing, and I like playing as the Wicked Queen in Villainous.
It's something we should definitely talk about, like whenever we run into that villain. Is like, how do you think she plays?
I actually really like her in Villainous, and you have to play like different poisons and things as her character. Not to get too sidetracked on her as a character in the board game, but I was never like super into her. But I love old creepy witches. Like I love from Robin Hood Men in Tights, Latrine. I love her. I love Eartha Kitt from Ernest Scared Stupid. She's like a crazy witch. So I definitely like her as the hag.
You gotta
quote,
see
unquote.
the new She-Ra cartoon. She has like a witch who's like, you find out later, you think she's insane, but you find out later, like, as she's traveling, like, she keeps going forward and backwards in time. And so she's having conversations with people who aren't there, but who were there for her a second ago.
Yeah. But I thought she was fierce as a villain. I thought she was very intense.
Exactly.
And
she gave major drag queen energy, I thought.
Oh,
like,
I don't know about that.
Oh, in a good way, though.
I loved how intense her eyes were. Her eyes are this very intense green color, and they zoom in on them at one point when she's talking to the mirror, and she's very upset about who's the fairest of them all, and they like really focus in on her eyes. And the witch, her eyes are like, when she's the hag, they're like bulging out, and they are also bright green. But the way they animated her eyes as the queen is a little bit different. And that I really liked a lot.
When she's a hag, she's much more cartoonish.
Yes.
The queen feels like a person. We talked about this a few times when we were watching, how it felt like there were kind of 2 different animated movies going on a little bit. Like the Huntsman, the Snow White, the Huntsman, Snow White, the Prince, and the Queen all felt like had the very like real feeling animation style. And the Dwarfs and then the Hag
are a little more
like caricature.
Yeah.
Which I loved her eyes. That scene, we'll get to her later, but when she she finishes singing, she looks around, she's just in the window, like, ah!
Oh, yeah, but I think her eyes are more intense when she's the queen, but
Right.
they're just, like, bulging out of her head when she's in the window.
So after she talks to the mirror and the mirror lets her know you're not the fairest, it cuts to Snow White, who's being forced to dress in rags and kind of be a cleaning person in the what do they say, a scullery maid?
I think it's a scullery maid. And that's in the description.
Yeah,
is what she's called in the story.
Which is interesting because later in the movie I went, well, how does this princess know how to cook and clean? I was like, oh, they connected it.
They
Good
did
job.
connect it.
But she doesn't seem to mind. She's smiling. She's singing.
No, she seems happy. And the wishing well, we both noticed when she looks into the wishing well, that water looked real.
It's got to be real.
It's got to be real water because it doesn't look animated, and it looked really good. Like her reflection in there, I thought looked really good. However, they did that.
And then after that, she's singing about she's singing
the
the
I'm Wishing song.
Who is she?
Yes, for the one I love.
And then the prince comes up and just spooks her.
He just like all of a sudden is like hello. He doesn't say hello. I forget the word he says.
I remember that he says today.
That's it.
Today.
Yes. He goes
today, like, and he does that big voice. I remember that
it's
very
a very booming
distinctly.
voice.
And then scares her away, and then he scuttles on for the rest. He just goes, "I'll see you at the finale," and disappears.
Yeah, it's just kind of a chance meeting, and she, and well, what happens is he scares her, he spooks her, and she goes up to the balcony, and then they sing together. He's down.
She doesn't sing. I think he just sings to her. Not that it matters. I'm sorry to correct you.
Yeah, but whatever it is,
yes.
they still interact more than just him spooking her. So there is a little bit more interaction there before it kind of moves on from there. And the other thing I wanted to mention is her voice is very specific. Like, I remember as a child never really liking Snow White's voice.
I hate it.
It grew on me. Like, as the movie went on, it didn't bother me as much, but it reminded me of Betty Boop, who I believe is Helen Kane. Is that correct?
Do we look it up?
Yeah, look it up so
you
we
keep
can
going.
Give Betty Boop credit. But I think that was Betty Boop's voice.
Betty Boop credit.
Yeah. But it's very reminiscent of Betty Boop's voice, of that, like, kind of high-pitched. So, essentially, was I right?
Mae Questel.
Oh, not anyone who I thought.
Yes. Okay. Many voices of Mae Questel. So, yes. Mae Questel, the voice of Betty Boop.
So I was wrong.
Betty Boop, who will show up in a later one of our movies.
Oh, yes. But didn't you say something about they animated Snow White?
Apparently during the very early designs, they made her look a little, they had kind of more stylized version, and one of them looked a lot like Betty Boop, and Walt Disney didn't want her to look, I don't know if he said he didn't want her to look sexy, or that was someone's interpretation of what he said.
Yeah.
But he was like very much like, she needs to look like she needs to be beautiful, but she needs to be like, she needs to look more like a normal person, and B, she shouldn't like be sexualized at all, which I think they pulled off pretty well.
Well, and you also mentioned that she's said to be 14. Is that in the Brothers Grimm story? So
Maybe,
they never
I
mention
don't know
her age.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where.
They never mention her age here. Like in the movie, there's no like specific like this is how old she is.
So the Queen commands the huntsman, the dumpy huntsman.
Yeah, who also has very bright green eyes. I noticed his eyes are very intense.
To go take Snow White out to the meadow.
To go pick flowers, and then she reveals he's going to kill her.
And then take her heart and put it in a box, which seems real.
For proof.
Well, that seems like something brought back from the Grimm. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like these Disney versions really, like, wipe a lot of that stuff clean, but that feels like one thing they really, like, were like,
they kept
let's keep that in. And then later, when she shows it to the mirror, she's like, here, like, they never show anything. She's just like,
no, they never actually show the heart. But yeah, so the huntsman, spoiler, goes out and can't do it. Like, goes to kill her, really intense green eyes. Can't do it, and encourages her to just run in the woods and just get away. And that scene is very... like, it is very spooky. Like, if you were a little kid, I can't remember...
No, not even a little kid, Tara. Imagine you've never seen a full-length color animated movie. In fact, you've never seen some special effects like that. These are special effects where they can draw whatever they want. So you're just sitting there, and all of a sudden the tree, like, comes alive with eyes.
Yeah, well, and I thought that was all really creative. Like, the logs in the water look like the crocodiles, and it's like you see a tree, and then the next minute you see it with the face, and... I thought it was very, like, it reminds you of when you're a child and you see shadows outside your window and you think of what they might be.
Oh, man.
And I feel like that's similar with Snow White, is not all of those things were actual animals. They were just, like, tree stumps and stuff.
Did I ever tell you that when I was a kid, I used to have dreams that there were lights outside my window and an alien ship was coming to get me, and then later I found out, like, boyfriends of Kim's would come get her, and she was in the house, and they were probably out there with like flashlights or something. Anyway.
But I like that idea of like she's super spooked about the woods, and then when she finally like she's very upset and distraught, and I don't know that she passes out, but she basically like just collapses, and all these eyes that were scary are actually all woodland creatures. So I like the idea that it's like she's super scared. The huntsman tried to kill her. She just found out the queen is trying to kill her. So she's super scared, and so everything looks scary. She doesn't know where she is. And then it's like you kind of take a breath and like check in your surroundings, and they're actually not scary. And so I liked that. I liked that interpretation of it. I thought that was good.
So then she meets all her little woodland friends, and they kind of wander out to go find. It looks like a doll's house to go find. Which
So she is very naive. Like, Snow White is very, throughout this whole movie, Throughout this movie, Tara kept saying, like, this is why I'm team villain. Like, hashtag team villain for life. But she just and she also just made a lot of assumptions. Like, when she, like, first of all, she looks in the house and it looks like it's been lived in. Like, it's very dusty when she's looking through the window. But it's definitely been lived in. Like, there are bowls stacked up. Like, there are things she could see that people are living there, right? And she goes in and assumes that they're children because they're all the tiny beds and the names. She sees the names on there. Mm-hmm. But she makes a lot of assumptions that, like, oh, I'll just clean this stranger's house and of course they'll let me stay. Like, okay.
Well, we'll get to the arrangement in a minute. So one of the things I wanted to bring up, since we're getting to the dwarfs,
and by all means, listeners, I don't want you to think, like, us picking this apart is, like, us not liking it. Because I enjoyed it way more than I thought I was going to enjoy it. Like, I really enjoyed it as a movie.
I have a note here. Does Mickey Mouse have suspenders? And while you were talking, because one of the pants she was cleaning for the dwarfs looked like Mickey Mouse pants.
He doesn't have suspenders.
No, he doesn't. You are correct. It looks like he wears his pants really far up with two buttons.
Yes, but there are no suspenders. Yeah,
it's very odd. So with the dwarfs coming up and the humor that comes along with them, Walt Disney decreed during this, he was like, we need to get people interested, we need to do something fun. I'm going to give anybody who comes up with a gag that we use $5.
Oh.
And they had a $5 gag thing, which the guy explaining it in the documentary I saw was like, $5 back then might as well have been like $100 or something. Yeah. And he said, because his gag he put in that he was proud of is the part where they peek over the bed to look at her.
Oh, I like that
all
part.
The
all the noses.
Pop, 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 like that.
That is a good bit.
So we head to the while she's cleaning and then sleeping on these in a stranger's home on a stranger's beds.
She's Goldilocksing.
Yes.
She just sleeps on the 3 beds. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just also going to say, like, there are so many iconic songs from this movie. Like, songs that today, and Ryan made a good point, like, there are songs that you hear them and you know them even if you can't place they're from Snow White. I know they're from Snow White, but I feel like Whistle While You Work is used in so many different ways. Like, it's used with kids to help clean up, and it's, it's used in different things. And the same thing with Hi Ho, it's Off to Work We Go. Like, it's another working song. And Someday My Prince Will Come. Like, they're so iconic, and I am very impressed, not only with the animation when you talk about, like, this being their first try and how good and successful it was, but when you think of the songs and that being their first, like, real stab at, like, these iconic songs that go on to be sung. I mean, they did music tracks for Steamboat Willie and stuff, but did they ever do stuff that were lyrical like this?
I don't know who they hired. That's the thing, is you could have hired someone who was a didn't
I guess,
necessarily
but either way, like, it was so iconic, I thought.
And they're iconic outside of the movie because I go, oh yeah, this is from Snow White all the time, and like, like every time it popped up in the movie, I just haven't seen the movie in so long, I don't know the context.
But I could still sing
song.
all the words to it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to mention that, but you can now move on to the dwarves because we do have some questions for them.
We go to the dwarves' place of business, the gem mine, which
is beautiful.
I think when this is done, we'll, like, once we get a Facebook group up and going, we're going to post a ride through of the dwarf ride because
which neither one of us have been on, but we have watched the ride through.
It looks very cool.
But the mine is beautiful, and there's the gag where Dopey puts the gems in his eyes, which is a very famous, iconic scene.
But my question is, like, what do they do with those gems?
Yeah, we both were wondering, like, do they get money for them? And they protect them at the end, so you've got Doc inspecting them. So Doc is actually looking for ones that are perfect or in good condition. So you watch him inspect them as they're singing their song, and then at the end of the day, they put them all in the vault, and Dopey locks the vault, but then puts the key next to the door of the vault.
I have some thoughts on this. Let me pull out my soapbox real quick. But I think this is the beginning of the American capitalist idea of like almost just working because that's what people do. Like everyone
not
has
working
to have,
for money, but just
working for money, but just like this is just like yes, of course they have jobs. Everyone should have a job, even though they're not selling a good or anything. Someone has to take the gyms out of there. Like Walt Disney's notorious has labor issues, so I think he's just like, well, we'll give them a 9 to 5 and won't discuss why they get the gems.
It is very interesting. We never know what they do with the gems, and I feel they could live. They live in a very modest house for all these gems that they have that they're doing.
My thought before Snow White showed up was, what do they eat like when she's not around? Because they don't have time to cook a soup or anything when they get home, and it's like, oh, they probably just buy it because they're all ridiculously rich.
I also am wondering, are they brothers? They never say, but I'm curious if they're brothers. We don't go into like the background.
Now, something interesting: the Hobbit had come out like a year or two before this, so that's one of the reasons it's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, like FS and not VES.
Oh, interesting.
Is because I think Tolkien kind of pluralized dwarf in his books, and that became more accepted. But like you have The Hobbit, and then later Lord of the Rings, which has a very different view on what dwarfs are, and this was like, this feels more like it's close to what they look like, but it feels a little bit like Santa's elves. All right.
So the Queen, we never find out, are they brothers, are they whatever, but I was curious, like, how do we...
Did you ever see... what's it called? Once Upon a Time is a real bad ABC show where all the...
No, you watched it for a while.
Some of it.
I never watched it.
So first of all, there were 8 dwarfs, and the 8th one was named Stealthy, and he could sneak around. And then also it was like dwarves like were hatched from eggs, and they were all men. And then like you didn't get your name till you got a personality, and then you got your name. It was very odd, but yeah.
So then we go back to their hi-ho, it's off.
It's home
from work we go. And so they're headed home, and all the animals, all of her new best friends, all her new BFFs, who are all sleeping in the beds with her, hear the dwarves, and they all peace out, and no one warns Snow White. I was really upset that not a single woodland creature warned Snow White about the fact that they're coming home.
I got a couple of things I want to insert real quick about Dopey specifically.
Yeah, that's fine.
So one thing we talked about is later is apparently they had done a lot of the animation, and one of the animators, there's a part where Dopey like goes a different way and then comes back, and they're all walking
out to wash.
Yeah.
And he walks behind the door instead of through the door.
But there's a part where he starts to follow him. He does a little hitch step to catch up with them. And Walt went, oh my God, I love it. He's going to do that all the time. So all the other animators went to that animator like, you jerk. Like, all of our stuff had been approved. All our ink and paint was done. And you, like, now we have to go redo all
Which
this
I
stuff.
will say, Walt was right. It's great. It's a great little, like, I don't want to say tick, but it's a quirk, I guess. It's a great quirk of Dopey's character. It makes him very identifiable. And each one of the dwarves have quirks. Like, each one has a different, like, the way they move,
when they're walking,
bits.
They're all the same except for Dopey.
Yeah.
And I think that makes it interesting, because if it's just, like, 7 guys walking exactly the same way, it doesn't seem like interesting animation. It doesn't feel like there was anything put into it, which there was, so you might as well give them those quirks to do that. Another thing was when they were coming up with their names, Dopey was a name that everyone kind of argued, well, isn't that kind of a modern name? Like, would they, does it seem out of place? And Walt Disney convinced them, well, the term Dopey is in Shakespeare. Dopey is not in Shakespeare anywhere. Like, that is something he lied to get him to put it in.
Also, going back to our favorite dwarf, I don't know why earlier I second guessed my gut when I was like, well, I really liked Grumpy and Dopey. Grumpy, I am Team Grumpy for life, and I was as a child, and Grumpy is the only one who has any sense. But we'll get there. I'm getting ahead of myself. We haven't gotten back to when she's asleep. They're coming home.
The dwarfs show up and realize everything's clean. Someone is here.
And they're very upset that, like, there's no sugar around the rim of their dirty cup. I forget which dwarf that was, but he puts his finger around the cup.
Sleepy.
He's like, the sugar's gone. And
Sneezy and Sleepy, I bet, are brothers, and everybody else just knows each other because they look very similar.
They do look similar.
No, not Sneezy and Sleepy. Bashful and Sleepy.
Yes. But anyway, so they are very upset. They realize, well, the first thing is when they get up to the house, the chimney's going, the lights are on, like there's candles lit. So they know somebody's in the house. The door is open because all the animals ran out, left the door open, didn't let anyone know what was going on.
Yes.
So then they go inside. They see things are clean. And, you know, there's all these little bits about them, like, all, like, who's going to go up the stairs and, like, find out who's up there. And so they nominate Dopey as the one to go up there. And so she stretches into the sheet, and it looks like a ghost. So then Dopey's scared, and then they all, like, roll out. And so all of that...
Which Dopey screams there, and I'm like, can Dopey talk? I think later they say he does, he just doesn't think to do it.
Well, he said he never learned how. That's what he said.
He's never learned how or never tried?
Yeah, never. I think it's never learned how. Or maybe never tried. But yeah, so I liked all of that. And then you get to see more details of the house. You start to really notice the details when the dwarves are looking around the cottage.
Everything is this real, and that someone had to draw this, and it's very ornate wood, etching. Their stairs have...
Their stairs almost look like owls' faces. Yeah. I thought like the knot in the wood.
My thought was I would love to see this rendered in real life.
I wrote that down too, like where you could explore the cottage. Or the other thing I thought would be cool is if Disney in the parks, if they had folks dress up like the dwarves and play those instruments. It would be really cool to have like a dwarf band that would like go around like playing... Yeah. Obviously, maybe not go around if you wanted them to play the organ, but even to play like that goose bass.
Or if they did like a, you know, not necessarily a beer hall because you maybe don't want to associate with beer, but like a German pretzels and food, but it's in a big version of
the cottage.
Because it's supposed to feel Germanic, isn't it?
I know that the Grimm fairy tales are
good
based
point.
in that, but yeah, so the cottage is very cool. So they finally all go up. And they meet Snow White, and they realize she's Snow White. And one of the notes I had about Grumpy, even though I love him dearly, is he's very down on women, and I want to know what women he's come into contact with in this world to have like such a negative view.
Are there lady dwarfs?
Oh, women! Like he's just like those feminine wilds, and he's got like all these like stereotypical like men versus women type statements.
There was. Walt Disney was doing something where he's talking about it. He had figurines of all the dwarfs, and he's like, this is Sneezy, he has hay fever. This is Bashful, he's in love with Snow White. And then which I was like, I don't know if we got that. And he goes, this is Grumpy, the woman hater. And I was like, what?
Yeah, well, and he is very much like against her. And I'm like, is he against her because she's so different? But it's just the statements he make lead you to believe that he's come in contact. Wronged. Yeah, he's been wronged. His heart has been broken.
Thrice
he's been
divorced Grumpy.
Yes. So that was just like an interesting thought to have. But they all take to her except for Grumpy. Grumpy's the one who she's really trying
and
to
I don't remember her
like
having... Yeah, I don't remember that part of it. Her being like...
I hope Grumpy likes me. She
prays. She's praying to God.
She prays. Yeah, that's at the end of the night after they sing and everything.
I don't know how many other... Are there any other Christian, like... I mean, Hunchback of Notre Dame is the next one.
No, there might be. Well, I mean, we'll have to track it. But, so she guesses their names by the names on the bed and, like, by their personalities. And so then she goes down, she makes supper, and the next thing I want to highlight is she tells them all to go wash. And now she talks to them like they're children again. She goes back from treating them like men to treating them like toddlers.
The deal is you can stay with us and you can clean... and do stuff. And then she changed the deal to, well, also you need to wash because I'm mother now. And it was like,
yeah, it was weird. The relationship shifts a little bit, but the washing scene is one of my favorite scenes.
I will say two notes I have here because you were talking about your favorite dwarf. I didn't realize how much I liked Sneezy until I watched it again. Sneezy was a good comic character.
Yeah.
But Sneezy is very hard to watch in the age of COVID-19.
Oh.
However, the hand washing scene, I was like, okay, I'm back on board. Like,
yeah. No, but I love the whole washing scene and them all scrubbing and then like them all tackling Grumpy. I vividly remember that and loving that
perfuming
bit.
him up.
Yes, and Dopey burping out bubbles because he swallows the soap. So that whole bit. So then it flashes back. It's bedtime. They all go to bed, and now we're not flashback, but we go.
It's
back.
not bedtime yet. Remember they do the party. This is one of the best, my favorite.
Oh,
song.
yes. Sorry, you were telling me to speed things up, so.
I just want to say that this is we'll get to that. They have a party. They go to bed. Okay.
The party's a great scene. You can talk about it.
I liked all their instruments and how they were all shaped like Sleepy was playing a fish, and like the bass looked like a.
They were all animal.
Yes, and I have a big vivid memory of Bashful starts to tell his lyric and then is like, oh, and gets real shy about it.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I connect to Bashful because my face always gets red when I'm embarrassed. So I'm
or
with
drink
Bashful.
wine.
Or drink alcohol. So, but then we go back to the castle and we're going back to the queen and she's talking to the mirror who has the rhyme. And now I don't remember what it was. But essentially she's like, well, now who's the fairest? Because she has the heart in the box. So she's assuming that the mirror is going to say it's her.
And the mirror's like, it's a pig heart, you dope.
Yeah, and I forget his rhyme, but I just liked the way he said it. So she's enraged, and she goes down to her secret lair, and her cape movement, when she goes down those steps, is so good. The way that cape moves, like air is flowing through it as she's rushing down the stairs.
They talked in the documentary I saw about how they kind of all went back to boot camp on animation, and they watched a bunch of videos of people with clothes and heavy baggy clothes and how they did that. And I remember them specifically like making a big deal out of how everyone's clothes were moving.
Yeah, but I loved the animation of that. So you go back to that, and the whole time she's brewing a potion to change the way she looks, and then also to make the poison apple. It has a very mad scientist vibe. Like when she holds the apple up, the lightning bolt strikes like Frankenstein. Is what it reminded me of, and so it has this very.
I wonder if the Universal monster movies were big around this time. I bet they were.
Yeah. But it does have that very, like, she's got, like, her laboratory and everything's bubbling and she's putting all the different things in and making the poisoned apple.
I also like that the ingredients were kind of not necessarily, like
tangible. They weren't.
Thank you. Yeah. Exactly. It was like an old hag's cackle, and the black of night.
Yeah.
Mummy dust was the only one that I was like, well, that's something.
But yeah, so you see her whole transformation and then...
Which is an astounding sequence.
Yes. And so then I asked the question, is the voice of the queen the same voice of the hag?
And the story I heard was... they were with the voice artist and she had done...
And her name... We have the names of everybody. I want to give credit to them at some point. But Lucille Laverne is the queen.
Looks like Marla Hooch in that picture. She went out. She basically, what happened was they said, we need this good, scary voice for the witch. And she went out and came back and did the voice for a bit. And they went, wow, what changed? She's like, I took my teeth out.
Which I love. And then just to give credit to Snow White's voice is Adriana, how would you say that?
Casalodi. Maybe.
Maybe.
Now, this is not a very fun story about her.
Oh.
But her career was really hurt from this because this was back when you would hire actors and they would be part of your studio.
Oh, okay.
So Disney didn't want her voice anywhere else, so he hired her and didn't cast her in anything.
Oh.
She had like one other role, and she was like a small role in The Wizard of Oz or something.
Huh.
So that was it.
And then Harry Stockwell is the prince, and then you can look up all the dwarves, but they're all listed as well when you go to look them up. But I did want to give credit to voices also because eventually we'll see voices that repeat, as well as voices that are more iconic that everybody knows. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to kind of start with that with Snow White. So I don't have a ton of notes from here on out. After she changes and becomes the witch, I will say Snow White does all the things that the dwarves tell her not to do before they go to work. They're like, do not talk to strangers. Do not let anyone in the house. And the witch pops up in the window.
It's so good. When it happens, I just laugh.
It is so good. She pops up in the window, and she's very ominous and scary from the start. And Snow White, being as naive as can be, she seems a little standoffish at first, but then all the birds attack the witch to try to get her to leave. And Snow White is so offended that the birds attacked this old lady that she then walks out of the house, makes sure she's okay, and brings her into the house. So I was like, of course she did everything she wasn't supposed to do. And then
I wanted to pop that thing on the hag's nose.
Oh,
so
her
bad.
her warts.
If you looked at it, it was like a little green, like the coloring.
But yeah, so, she finally takes the bite of the apple. She gets enticed. All of the woodland creatures go to the dwarves.
Now, if it sounds like we're wrapping it up very quickly at the end, I gotta say, the movie wraps it up very quickly.
It does beat after beat. So basically, all the woodland creatures go to the dwarves. They've barely set up for work. They probably just got there because they walked to work, and they're trying to let them know that something's wrong with Snow White, like something's happening. And eventually, they get them all to go back with them, and they all ride the deer.
Who leads the call?
Team Grumpy leads the way, which I love. Well, and we should say by the end, the other things we noticed about Grumpy is he does get his forehead ready. She kisses all the dwarves on the forehead on the way out the next morning, and he is grumpy about it, but is secretly really happy that she kissed him. Mm-hmm. And then she's making a pie before the witch gets there, and it's got Grumpy's name on it in dough.
No, I think she was making them for everybody.
But it was still sweet. Either way, it was
I think there's
that
another version of this where Grumpy kisses her and she wakes up. I'm just saying.
I wouldn't mind that version. He loves again.
Yes, he's like, my fourth wife will be my...
But, so she does take a bite of the apple. They all get back there, and I did find it interesting. They don't go to check on Snow White. They go after the witch.
I mean, I think they needed to.
Yeah, no, I'm not, upset that that's the choice they made. It was just an interesting choice. I don't remember it that way, and they chase her to the top of a cliff, and she tries to get this boulder to knock down the dwarves, and that's when Ryan mentions these two buzzards, which are so ominous and evil, and you think that they're maybe with the witch because they show up when she's walking to the cottage, I think, and they're looking so sneakily, and they're just excited to see anything die. I don't think they cared who died.
Nope.
They weren't on a team, and the witch winds up having a very violent death of falling from that cliff.
So that's something we're gonna talk about because
Disney
has some pretty.
They have some pretty intense.
Yeah, intense is a good word. It's not gruesome. It's not gory. It's just intense.
Yeah.
And you said falling from something high seems to be the
there's a lot of
way.
Villains. Number
we
one
should
way
start
for
doing
them
that
to
as
die.
what is the number one way for the villain to die? We'll start
so far it's
that.
falling from a high cliff. So that's what happens to her. And
falling from a high cliff, and that boulder, which is gigantic, rolls the other way.
rolls, definitely crushes her. Yeah, it definitely crushes her. At the bottom.
Question.
So they put her in a glass coffin because they found her too beautiful to bury.
Oh, before we talk about that, Tara, I wanted to ask you,
yes.
How do you feel about the depiction of the elderly in this movie?
So I was thinking about it because I do a lot of times love... I just think, they didn't depict her that she was senile. She was just a creepy old hag. I hate to say it that way.
You were okay with when 7 men followed her to kill her?
No, they had figured she had done something to their Snow White.
Here's another thing. She doesn't change back.
No, I was wondering what happens with that. If she had to go back to her lair, and she maybe had to make something to do that. But
it just seemed interesting to me that she was so hideous. She was like, "Now I'm the fairest." It was oh, geez.
Yeah.
I like the idea of her being.
Or she went mad. She was
exactly.
so crazed with becoming the fairest, she didn't think that through.
Exactly.
But yeah, so they write those words that.
Yes, we have an exposition dump of Then this is what happened, where they're like, we're running out of money.
Yeah. So they let you know that she's too beautiful to be buried, so they put her in this glass coffin of glass and gold.
And then, you might have forgotten that there was a prince in this movie, but lo and behold, he
finds out, he hears about the princess in the coffin. It's something that's worded something like that. And all of the dwarves are grieving, and the prince comes by and kisses her and scoops her up and puts her on a horse, and then that's their happily ever after. So,
that's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and we've got a couple things we want to go over. First of all, how'd you like the villain? Let's talk about the villain.
I liked her, and I think we've talked about it through the description. I thought she was really fierce. I thought I liked her both as the witch and as the evil queen, and I think her personality was a little bit different, and I liked that you saw two sides of her.
I've got the sidekicks now. There's the good guy sidekicks and the bad guy sidekicks. I'd say the good guy sidekicks were kind of the dwarfs in this,
and the woodland creatures,
and they were great.
And we loved the turtle.
There's a turtle in this that keeps getting stuck
the poor
behind.
turtle who, like, every time he finally gets to where other creatures are going, they turn and run the other way or go down the stairs when he's going up, and it's a fun little bit throughout the movie.
That had to be a $5 gag.
Yeah, I liked that.
Her
sidekick, I guess, is the mirror.
I guess the huntsman, maybe that crow that's in her.
Yeah, that crow, but that crow doesn't really follow her. Not like the crow with Maleficent. Like, that's her
The
crow.
huntsman just disappears. Like, he was like, here's her heart. I'm moving to another kingdom.
Well, probably because he's afraid when she finds out it's not really Snow White's heart.
I think in the fairy tale, when she finds out, she kills him.
Probably.
Which, again, why didn't he peace out to Cinderella's kingdom or whatever?
Yeah. So, yeah, I understand why we don't see the huntsman again, but I love the mirror. I kind of wish there was a little bit more of the mirror, just because he was very ominous, and I liked I liked the language they used for him. I liked the way he talked.
Do you remember? It might have been on Disney Channel. It might have been on it wasn't called Sunday Night Disney. It was like Magical World Disney.
Yes.
Wasn't the mirror a character on that? He'd introduce stuff. It was like.
I don't remember that, but that could be.
I'll have to look that up, and we may post that on the soon-to-come
Facebook page. Yeah.
What did you think of the princess? Now,
she was very naive, and I had to. Once I got over that, she was fine. And then you remembering somewhere in the story that she's young, that she's like a 14-year-old.
That's what I kept saying. She's 14,
but we don't actually. They never say that in this version, in this Disney version. But she's very naive. And I just have a hard time with that. But overall, I think she was fine. She didn't irk me.
I think Snow White is the worst character in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, second only to the prince.
She didn't irk me as much as I thought she was going to irk me, I should say. Like, I think I had different memories of it. Like I said, as it went on, there were certain things I was annoyed about, but as a character as a whole, she didn't annoy me as much as I thought she would.
Okay. How was the prince? You know my opinion on that. He sucked.
I thought the prince was fine. I mean, we didn't get to know his story. He could have been very interesting.
If I knew you had such a low bar for men, I wouldn't have tried so hard when we were...
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, we don't get a chance to get to know him. He, like, comes in, he sings, and then he
seems
leaves.
fine. You're a prince apologist.
I guess.
A charming apologist.
I will agree. Yeah, he's like piece of white bread, like, you know, you don't find out anything else.
A human glass of milk.
Yeah, but he was fine. I didn't have any issues with him just because he wasn't in it long enough.
What was your favorite musical number, do you think?
Oh man, that's a tough one for me. I love the whole hi-ho. I love that whole sequence. And I love Whistle While You Work, too. I like that tune a lot. I like the whistling, and the dwarves whistle, and she whistles, and the birds whistle.
Mm-hmm.
The dwarves whistle and hi-ho. I also like the Wishing Well song because it makes me think of us, like, acting it out as kids. I don't actually like that song, but...
Oh, yeah.
But I would say hi-ho and Whistle While You Work.
I like the two dwarf songs. I like the washing song. Which
I forgot about that song.
Just because, like I told you, I like it that the chorus is
yeah.
And then
I thought about, like, with kids, that would be fun. Like, if you were trying to teach them to, like, wash up before dinner, that would be a fun song to sing and, like, be like, go wash up, and then, like, just do that. Like, that would be kind of like a fun thing to do with kids.
So I've forgotten about the washing song, but the song I've always liked from this, and I remember for this, is because I think they showed it again. I was talking about DTV, and I think one of them was the silly song where they're dancing and doing stuff.
Yes.
Because it has one of my favorite comedy tropes, which is, I guess it's from the new Muppet movie. They call it Muppet Man, where it's multiple people inside a trench coat.
Oh, yes, and it's Dopey and Sneezy.
Dopey and Sneezy. Why did they have that coat?
I don't know.
Whose coat was that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, none of them are that tall.
But I think
it must be from Grumpy's past loves.
Maybe he had a tall wife. I just think, like, I think that's one of the funniest things is more than one person in a trench coat. Yeah. I think it's just so funny. Okay, does it hold up? The three things I have under here, and we can think of more, is female character agency. I'm going to say not really.
No.
The princess doesn't have... Well, she's fine.
She's fine.
She doesn't have a lot...
She doesn't have a lot of street smarts, but
she doesn't have agency in her story. She just someone tells her to run away. Someone tells her to stay in the house.
I would
Someone
agree with
saves
that.
her.
I would say she doesn't have a lot of street smarts, but she's also been locked away in a castle to scrub. So she hasn't had a lot of life experience.
I guess.
So you could argue that.
Drinking or smoking, I don't think there was any in
there. Was none of that.
There's a lot of beer steins laying around in the
Yeah,
Dwarfs
but I don't
house.
know that they're drinking.
Right.
Yeah, you don't really see any of that.
Ethnic representation. So there's that one scene that goes by real quick with the symbols.
Very briefly with the symbol, and Dopey kind of gets out of the scene, but that I didn't think it was too bad, especially for 1937. I thought there was
Dopey. Again, this is two white people discussing whether ethnic representation is good. The white representation in this movie was wonderful.
Well, and probably will continue to be wonderful.
But yeah, so there is it. Okay. What are your thoughts? Would you like to release a platinum edition of this?
Yes, I think this one stays for so many reasons. I think
absolutely.
For animation reasons, I think for the triumph, I think the music, there are so many great parts about this movie. And I think it paved the way for so many things to come that I think without Snow White, you don't have a lot of what we will probably enjoy about the ones that come after it.
I agree. It's definitely one. It's a Disney classic. There's no question. It's.
I mean, Disney has claimed it a classic, but I will say I also agree with Disney in that regard.
It's a Tara and Ryan classic.
Yes.
I obviously without this movie there is no. Without this movie there is no Disney animation studio. There's no Disney.
Yeah,
World.
If this movie wasn't a success, like you said earlier, it would have really changed the course about what Walt Disney focused on.
I don't think Walt Disney would have existed. He had all his money in this. And think about how much Disney owns today. Isn't that crazy? This movie was such a linchpin and all that.
Yeah. And
them owning Fox and Marvel and
Star
everything.
Wars. I think his head would probably explode to see what all Disney owns today. But
yeah. Well, he's still alive. Remember, his head's frozen somewhere.
But,
well, cool, guys.
Yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed it, and I was pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to that happening with others that I watched as a kid but haven't revisited in years.
Absolutely. So. Well, right now, guys, we don't have anything set up for you to get a hold of us, but go ahead and check the description on this episode. By the time we ship it out, we may have all that stuff, so you can look there and
look us up on Facebook or look us up on Twitter, and we'll definitely have an email address.
Yeah, we'll have some stuff up
as well. So if you have questions, if you have comments, if you disagree with anything we've said, or have interesting facts that we didn't cover, because as you'll see, we talked for quite a while, and there's probably still so much you could dive into. And I think that that's what we're going to find with each of these movies is there's so many layers that I think you can peel back and so many different things you can focus on. So we're just trying to do a brief overview, but we welcome the comments, the thoughts, the questions along the way.
All right. Well, so our next one up is Pinocchio, I believe.
Pinocchio. Yes. 1940s
yes,
Pinocchio.
Where you'll enjoy many, I'm sure, subtle and authentic representations of Italians from both the movie and from Tara and myself.
Yes.
Thanks for listening to Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries.
If you want to tell us your favorite Disney villain and why it's Gaston, send us an email at trprincessdiaries@gmail.com.
Or you can send a tweet about how great Maleficent is to @TRPDiaries.
Check out our Facebook group by searching for Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries.
Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries are available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast, and many more.
Wherever you hear us, please be our knight in shining armor and give us a 5-star review.
Thanks again, and until next time, remember to always live happily ever after.